Hey, I wanted to do a bit of a debrief from San Francisco Climate Week. Last week I talked about Al Gore, but I also hosted a discussion with Mass Reforestation, Paul Gamble, Grant, the CEO of Mass Reforestation, and I. We hosted this community discussion in San Francisco. And one of the key points that so much of what's next for carbon removal revolves around is this recent model from Rocky Mountain Institute and the Bezos Earth Fund. And it comes back to this innovation curve that shows that to be on track for 10 billion tons of carbon dioxide removal by 2050, that by 2030 we need to be removing about 285 million tons per year. And so I asked the audience, I said, this is just when we were getting this discussion going. I said, how many people are familiar with that number? And a couple hands went up, but not very many, and definitely not most people. And that is a critical number for anybody that's working in carbon removal, anybody that's working on planetary balance, like that's folks like Al Gore, and our climate leaders. Anybody that's looking at those things in terms of where carbon rule fits in, they need to be looking at that report. And so I wanted to share it, just if you haven't seen it before. This is the report. It came out. We got a preview of it back in February 2024, in DC, but it got published, I think, in, I forget, November, December, something like that. But in it, and this is this report. It's terrific. I recommend reading the whole thing. It outlines really a terrific roadmap for actually how we can get to some of these targets. And the key graph is here on page 24, which is this hypothetical deployment trajectory. That follows the innovation curve of an S curve. And so what it points to is to get to 10 billion tons per year, going through this emergence stage, adoption phase, and then expansion phase. What that means is to be on track, we need to be at, that's 0.285, that's 285 million tons per year by 2030 to be on track for those 2050 targets. And so that's where all of this comes from. And I want to make sure that everybody sees this, understands it. This is really what the goal that we're working backwards from. When you look at the billion ton goal, for example, on the AirMiners website, if you add up the area under that curve from until 2030, that also gets you to about a billion tons. But here in the report it says 285 million tons per year. So um, that's what we can really center around. And you need to know that last year we removed, I mean, well less than a million tons, something like 600,000 tons of carbon removal last year. So about a million tons. And so the path to getting there by 2030 means that we need to triple removals every year for the next 5 years. So if in 2024 we have 1 million tons, 2025 we need to do 3, 2026 9 million, 27 million, 81 million, and then 2029 243 million. That gets us into 2030, well over that 285 million ton. But that tripling per year, that's what it looks like. That's what it would look like for us to be on track. And so that's where, if you're removing carbon this year, then that can fit into that. How do we hit 3 million tons this coming year? I remember there was a presentation by Nikki, the head of the X Prize Carbon Removal, and it was back at this workshop in DC. And she had surveyed, or the X Prize team had surveyed all the participants, all the competitors, and said, well, where do you estimate, how much carbon do you estimate you're going to be removing by 2030? And they just took all those estimates and added them up, and they didn't add up to these kinds of numbers. And so the question is, look, if we're taking estimates from startups that are probably generally like wildly high, but if we add all those up and we're still not there, then we really do need to be working really hard to make sure that we actually get to these types of targets, and that 3 million tons per year this year is something that we should be working for. And if we're not tied back into this big picture, in this science, it brings into question, like, well, what is it we're doing, right? If you're removing carbon, but not in a way that might scale to this way or might not contribute to this in a big way, well, what are we really doing? Um, at the same time, maybe you're working on something that's really amazing. Like if you have the potential to remove 1 million tons of carbon dioxide in this next year, which I know there are some of you out there that are talking about numbers like that, that would really put us on track. That would be 1 million tons would be a third of what we need to do to be actually on track for having carbon removal deliver the impact that we know it can deliver. And so I want you to think about, where does your company fit into this? Where do you expect to be by 2030? Where do you expect to be this year? Um, and that's something that I wanted to get in that discussion because I want more people raising their hands, having seen this target, thinking about this target, building this into your models. And look, I get that that is an incredibly steep growth rate, and this is where carbon removal needs to get in terms of being on track for 10 billion tons per year. Now, you might say, look, well, I disagree with this report, or you have a different uh, way that you think this could grow, or maybe it's instead of an S curve, or maybe it's a steeper curve or something like that. That's totally fine. Happy to talk about those things, and maybe it means we could push some things back, or maybe we could move a little bit slower or something like that. Um, but this is what's in the report, and this has a lot of credibility and research behind it. And I think it'll be difficult to find a different growth path that actually gets us where we need to get. This goes back to the message with Al Gore last week around, look, we really need investment in carbon removal right now. We need investment in these up and coming technologies that have the potential to scale rapidly, have the potential to remove massive amounts of carbon dioxide. That's why carbon removal investment is needed now. We can't wait till 2040. We can't wait till 2050, right? There's sort of this idea of sometimes of, oh, we should kind of wait on carbon removal and do some other stuff in the meantime. We have to scale carbon removal alongside decarbonization. And carbon removal is so small right now. We really have to get that investment in to be able to be growing at the pace that's needed. It also invites, look, are there other ways to remove carbon? Are there ways that can really drop the cost, really rapidly increase the scale? So if you're working on any of those things, occasionally I get emails from people that are saying, hey, look, we can remove carbon for under $100 a ton, maybe $10 a ton, maybe single dollars a ton. If you're working on stuff like that, I'd love to hear about it, because these are all things that can contribute to us getting on track with this 285 million ton per year target by 2030 to set us up for the 10 billion tons by 2050. I know it's a lot of numbers, but I wanted to show this to you. It's in the reports on page 24. Like I said, I recommend reading through the rest of it. The whole report is effectively built with this chart as one of the core pieces, because this gives you, okay, look, this is where we need to get to. How do we get there? So I encourage you to read this if you haven't read it. If you have read it, reread it. Really it's a really primary, it's really good science for what needs to happen in carbon removal. So with that, I look forward to hearing from you, and let's go remove 285 million tons per year by 2030.